Well, my guests today on Dateline Abuja are Rufwan Ibrahim Jara. He is the National Auditor, Young Democratic Party here in Abuja. He's also an environmental scientist, a politician, and an electrical engineer, all in one. You're welcome to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Temitope Ajayi. He's a real estate developer and also a politician here in the FCT. You're welcome to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're discussing the effects of government not continuing projects from the last dispensation. So starting with, what do you think, or how can you rate us now, development-wise?
Well, the truth is we're very low in development because our critical infrastructure is almost lacking. And if you look at the budget, there's a huge deficit for capital projects and the rest. And our budget is too small. For 200 million people, $40 million a year is just too small. Why? Infrastructure is expensive. Real road network, ports are expensive. You cannot build a good road under 60 million per kilometer. In the north, where you even have strong bases and laterite and hardcore. In the south, you're talking about $1 million for a good kilometer of road. And if you say you want to build a lot of road and railway, how much is our budget? And this is the reason why it's even difficult to have continuity, it's even difficult to have good projects in the first place, and then our budget is just too small. But if you look at it, I feel that for Nigeria to make huge giant steps in infrastructural development, our budget should be above $100 billion a year.
Okay, that's for infrastructure specifically, or all?
Yes. Well, if you do that, considering that our wage bills are eating a chunk of the $40 billion, if you have anything above the $40 billion, say 60, and that goes into infrastructure for the next 10 years, you're talking about $600 billion, you would see the changes.
Okay, do you have anything to add to that?
I look at this from a holistic view. Development to me is not just infrastructure. I've been in this world for a couple of years now. What I've seen about roads since I was a little boy is what I still see. I travel almost every other 2 weeks down to Ekiti State.
By road?
By road, yes. And I'm always quite scared on the road, particularly Kogi area. Now, I've also taken a look at the educational sector, where I've, over the years, killed it. I remember those days we all went to public schools. But right now, what we see is a whole lot of investment from individual pockets into developing private schools. Now, you look into the budget, like you rightly said, a chunk of what is in the budget does not go into developing people, human beings, does not go into developing the health sector. Rather, we pay so much money in salaries, in wages, not putting bulk of it into infrastructure. If you look at it, the roads that we're talking about, the first time I traveled to Abuja, I went through Ilori, Bida, Mina. The road was bad, yes, but it was motorable. But all these years we have left that road, now it is practically not motorable. Now, we put pressure on the Lokoja axis, which has now gone bad. And you now have a whole lot of trucks on that road. How do you want to stop them from plying that road when you're not doing anything? So for me, I think it's a lot more than just infrastructure, just road. I think it's holistic.
So why do you think, why would you think development and the government don't, for example, this new government can continue projects from the old government administration? It's either they terminate it or they slow the process.
Well, we cannot factor out the politics that is involved. Every government wants to start a new thing and finish it. I even commend this government for finishing one or two projects, particularly the Abuja railway. If you see the number of people that ply Kaduna through the railways, you would wonder why we didn't invest in that sector for a long while. And I mean, this is the same thing that should have been happening on the Lagos axis, on the Port Harcourt axis, but now that railway is now under pressure because there are too many passengers to even service it. And this is what the death of or the planlessness of our former leaders have caused, and then the lack of ability to continue projects. I'll give you an example. When Yaradua came, he refused to continue with the privatization of the refineries. In fact, Dangote bought Kaduna Refinery, and he reversed the process. Now, Kaduna Refinery has 5,000 workers fully paid with their annual emoluments and trainings, but the refinery is not producing 90% of the year.
Wow.
It has a full retinue of staff run by the NNPC, but the refinery is not. There are people who have been employed in that refinery, have worked 10 years. They have not seen the refinery work for 1 full year.
Wow.
And if it was your private business, would you sustain it that way? No, let's be sincere with ourselves. And then government too has abandoned its own responsibilities. You build an estate, you do your road, you do your borehole, you provide your security, you provide your healthcare center. Everybody has become a government unto himself.
Yes.
And this is wrong. Government keeps saying, we need to enlarge taxes to be able to do more. But I say no. There are too few people paying too much taxes. Too few people paying too much taxes. You have to increase the tax net before you even increase the taxes. And then when you are executing the project, you have to do the right thing, up to standard. When the Buhari administration came, they looked into the Mambila project contract, and they said they saved about $10 to $15 billion by renegotiating. And this is what happens when people negotiate for contracts, whether I like it or not. Some of our politicians are dubious. They add their own figures. So when the next guy comes, he knows that the last guy added some figures, and he might have removed those funds even before I came. So I'm not going to start a new project. I'm not going to start something that he benefited 100%. And these are the sentiments that are put into projects, and that's why you can't find.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's priority on the side of individuals that take over government at time. Now, when we talk about continuity, we have had, for 16 years, we've had PDP taking over and all. And what every individual that gets there wants is to have one big project in his own name. I see no reason why we cannot have a developmental plan for, say, 20 years, like the Light Vision 2020 and all, and let the next government be able to follow through and complete the project or move on to a particular level while another government takes it over. But what they want, particularly, is to be able to have a name written that I did so bridge, or I built so hospital, or I was the one that commissioned this. I mean, just last week, there was an argument that President Buhari was in Lagos to commission the Eco-Atlantic, and some people came up with the fact that no, this was commissioned by Jonathan, and now you are going there to commission it. Now, there was a bit of mix up there, because the Lagos government claimed that he commissioned it. Presidency released a statement that no, it wasn't commissioned, he only went on a tour. So we need to move beyond individual interest to an objective mindset for the country. Be able to, Nigeria is mine, is ours, and we want to move on from that. However, one thing I would like to add is, I think there is so much power at the central, and that alone brings so much responsibility on the president or the government at the national level. If people have been talking about restructuring, it means different things to different people. But to me, I feel if you can let the state government have their powers, produce or earn money locally, internally, and be able to put a part of it to the central, then the central is able to focus more on international relationship and national development, so that each state can at least develop its own state. That way, people are able to hold their governors responsible when things are wrong. But right now, if you want to talk, a governor will point fingers at the president, and before you know it, all we hear is stories here, stories there. This person looted, the other person didn't loot. So I feel at the end of the day, the government needs to sit down think through, consult.
Don't you think they've already done that?
Well, if they had, for me, I haven't seen.
Okay.
Really, because I'm yet to feel the impact of such. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, I also agree with him. The reason why Nigeria lags behind in development index, transparency, and then we're high with corruption index is because of the centralization of power. How can a state governor expect the federal government to provide primary education, primary health care? He has a budget that nobody knows. He spends for security what nobody knows. You dare not ask a governor what he spends. But then the governors have the audacity to ask the president what he spends. Wow. And this is, they don't know that the 36 states, because of their lack of transparency, pull down Nigeria's rating in whatever. Because they're not doing anything. How many states would you see, apart from Lagos and Kano and one or two other states, doing huge projects? Yeah,
but coming to Lagos State now, Lagos State is one of the many states that are benefiting from continuity in governance or, in good projects. And we'll say, well, a good thumbs up to them. What effects do you think that the citizenry are facing because of the lack of continuity in government? Because I think we can only say maybe Lagos State, and I don't know any other state compared to. Do you have any other state compared to Lagos
Kano
State?
Is doing well too.
Yes, Kano, yeah, in continuity of projects, yeah. And you just said something very brilliant about the 36 that we actually count for anything based on the 36 states.
Yes.
What are the effects you think that because we don't continue in projects that affects us as citizens?
I think even there's an irresponsibility on the part of we the citizens, and there's an irresponsibility on the part of government. On we the citizens, do we ask our leaders? On the social media is me and him, young people doing APC, PDP, this one, that one said, this one said, instead of asking the real question.
How would we ask the questions? Sorry to cut you out. Yeah. How are we going to ask the questions?
You for instance, if a governor is facing pressure, some states have vibrant youth that organize themselves into civil organizations, and they ask their governors questions. They question. I mean, Ambode has shown from his. I think he does this town hall meeting. Look, if the governors provide an access to the people ask them questions. But most governors even shy away from. There are governors that spend more days in Abuja than in their states, and you dare not ask them questions. And then there's no vibrancy of the opposition. Lagos has already set a standard. Anybody who performs below par will not make it for another 4 years. We saw what happened. Despite all the rancor, sometimes Tinubu is too overbearing and all this. All the senators and all the reps in Lagos came together, threw away party lines, and adopted Ambode for another 4 years. In Kano, it's becoming the same thing. If you don't do better than Kwankwaso, if you don't do better than Ganduje, you will not come back. But in any other state, in many other states, there's no vibrant position. The people are too hungry, so they go with the governor, get peanuts, and then they don't even ask him questions. So he does what he.
So how does it affect us?
It affects us. We're backward. We don't have. How can in the 20th century Bill Gates was telling us about us developing human capital, and all the governors, which in fact I think he was speaking directly to the state governors. How many states send their civil servants for training? Primary healthcare centers that are meant to be manned by states, how many of them would you find a nurse or a doctor? How many teachers would you find in a primary school? And this was the human capital he was talking about. And we all threw it at Buhari is Bill Gates, they are replying Buhari and this. I think it's the irresponsibility at the state level that has drawn us backwards.
Well, don't you think that is more? Don't you think that they actually come in? No government comes into power to just sit down or to loot. For example, most people come in with their visions, their aspirations, their plans. They even target Vision 2020, 7-point agenda, etc. But I'm sure everybody comes in. Why don't they do it? What's stopping them? You don't have to even get a new one. You can actually borrow or continue.
I think what I think is they have studied Nigerians over time and know that all we need to do is tell them those promises, those lies that we know ourselves that we can't keep. When we get there, we'll sort things out. I mean, there's an old saying that when we get to the river, we'll cross it. Now, I want the vote first, so I'll tell you all I want to tell you. Unfortunately, that's a problem we have been having. Now, when this government says they're going to make 1 naira to $1, I mean, we all knew it's not possible. I mean, you must be coming with some magic to be able to. I mean, whatever made people to believe that story, whatever made them to believe such promises, those are the kind of promises we're talking about. So when they get there, obviously from the beginning, had been a show that was never going to work. Those promises were never going to be fulfilled.
Oh, beautiful! What's your counsel? You know, we're running out of time. And this is very what's your counsel?
Like I said, I'm a politician. I've gone down to the grassroots, and sometimes what I see there really, really discourages me. It's the same old thing. When you come and you start telling the youth, look, first of all, we have cultural issues. In Nigeria, they say when you gather 2 or 3 people, you must break kolonu. You know what that means? It means you must provide some sort of refreshment. So imagine gathering a crowd of 500 people. Then it means you have to pull out of your lean resources, and if you do this for 2-3 gatherings, you must need to replenish. That is why it's easy for people when they go into government to make sure they stock all these resources, so that when they gather this meeting, they give peanuts and people are happy. But like we said, the enlightened ones, we have an obligation to enlighten our people back there, to ask the right questions. You should ask your rep, why did you build a PHC center here when you know that there will be no doctors and nurses? Why do I have a school here when there are no teachers? Because if I send my child to an empty classroom, he's no better than a tout. It's not going to be different. So we should ask questions, and we should ensure that our leaders who represent us, all the Obas and the Emirs and the Serkis, we should also ask them, because they are the ones sometimes that speak on our behalf, and they also collect on our behalf. Okay. So we should ask them questions.
Okay, what's your counsel, Timmy?
Well, in total, I agree also that we should ask them a whole lot of questions. And how do we go about asking them questions? There are a series of avenues that we can use. For instance, you have your rep, you have your senator. How often do they come home for town hall meetings? They decide for you what they want to do for you. Why don't they sit down on a round table with all stakeholders, the others you mentioned, the youth in the villages, the women in the villages, and ask, what are those critical needs of ours? I'm just an individual with my advisors. We cannot tell exactly what you need. Now, you go to some areas, somebody is doing empowerment and is given sewing machine, wheelbarrows, and I ask questions. Have they actually told you those are the things that they need to performance-based politics? If you cannot perform, then we don't vote you in, irrespective. And if you vote us, if you are voted in and you don't perform, they actually have the right to actually recall you. If you're not able to recall you,
that's a new one. That's a nice one, because we don't do that.
Yeah, they have the right. Like it was in the case of Dino Milai. However that went, if it was triggered by some other political interested people, I wouldn't know. But at least they made that attempt.
At least he's on the defensive.
Yeah, and they made the attempt to. Beautiful. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. I've been talking to Rufun Ibrahim Jara. He is the National Auditor, Young Democratic Party here in Abuja. He's also an electrical engineer and an environmental scientist, and of course, a politician. Thank you so much for being part of Dateline Abuja. And also, Temi Tokwe Ajayi, a real estate developer and a politician here in the FCT.
Thank you very much.
Well, the program is Dateline Abuja. Thank you so much for being part of us. You can drop your comments on our social media page showing right now on your TV screen, and also watch a repeat broadcast on our YouTube channel, also showing right now on your TV screen. Join me same time, same station. I'm Hawa Momo. Bye for now.